Disclaimer. This podcast discusses subjects surrounding demons, demonic possessions, demonic presence, hauntings, and uncomfortable topics related. Please listen with caution. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Truth or Demons. This is episode 2, Annabelle. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to introduce and tell you all a little bit about myself. I was so excited about my first episode and writing and publishing it that I left me out completely. So, hi, my name is Stevie. I just turned 37, I'm a seamstress as a day job and a weirdo in all other moments. I'm also a costume designer and a crafter. I have the attention span of a gnat and need constant distractions. Okay, maybe I don't need them, but I love them. The distractions, that is. And I am now trying my best to dedicate more of my free time and attention to this podcast. So, thank you for coming back to join me for episode 2, getting to know me a little bit, and hopefully coming back for more as I progress on this journey. Alright, let's get down to business. Did you have a look at the Instagram after episode 1? How about those paintings? Ed was definitely quite the painter. Okay, the real reason you're all back. The most infamous of creepy dolls, Annabelle. When Annabelle gets brought up, 2 images come to mind. The first being the famous photo of Lorraine Warren carrying the Raggedy Ann doll to the Warrens Museum for safekeeping. And the second, that intensely creepy porcelain doll created specifically for the movie. Some have speculated that the scary porcelain doll seen in the movie is another collectible that they went with for different reasons. I even read a comment on a random Reddit thread of someone claiming to have grown up with one of the movie Annabelle dolls. But she's mistaken or telling fibs. Tony Rosen, a prop master, created the Annabelle doll straight out of his own creepy little imagination specifically for this movie. It was his first major gig in the magical world of movies and prop design. If you'd like to check out some more of Tony Rosen's creations, you can find him on Instagram at tony.rosen.sfx or find him on Facebook at Infinite SFX by Tony Rosen. The next biggest question when it comes to Annabelle the movie is, why is Annabelle not a Raggedy Ann doll in the movie like she is in real life? Lorraine says the following when asked about this in an interview. Quote, I thought the doll was absolutely creepy and frightening. The Conjuring director, James Wan, explained to me that he felt there might be pushback from the company that holds the trademark for the original Raggedy Ann. Then he went on to explain that he just has an affinity for frightening-looking dolls. So he came up with what now is the movie version of Annabelle. End quote. So there's the answer. The actual reason Annabelle is not a Raggedy Ann doll is James Wan. He just wanted a super creepy doll in his movie. James Wan was also somewhat worried the original holders of the Raggedy Ann trademark might not support their doll being portrayed in this light. It basically sounds like Wan was fulfilling his own horror fantasies. He is a brilliant horror film director, so he can have this one, I guess. Although, I personally would have been much more terrified of an unassuming sort of Raggedy Ann doll versus the porcelain doll that was officially the movie Annabelle. That's just me, though. So let's talk about the plot of the Annabelle movie briefly. Then I'll go over the actual Annabelle doll and her story as told by Ed and Lorraine. The beginning of the movie seems to coincide with the so-called truth. 2 young nurses who are named Debbie and Camilla in the film are experiencing strong activity seemingly coming from a doll one of them acquired. After experiencing strange and unsettling events, Camilla explains how she first called a medium who informed them the spirit of a girl named Annabelle Higgins, who had lost her parents and taken a liking to the doll, was now possessing the doll. The movie then reveals they are explaining this to Ed and Lorraine. They continue telling the Warrens it started out innocent but got worse. Ed then asks, how did you end up with the doll? Debbie informs him it was a gift from her mother on her birthday. Debbie then says, I don't know where she got it, but we are beyond terrified. Then the scene fades with some sinister music and cuts to the opening credits. From here, the movie becomes 100% fiction, supposedly explaining the origins of Annabelle from a year earlier. The Warrens are no longer present characters, and the movie has turned into an independent fictional horror story, which isn't that terrible as far as scary movies go. And I say fictional and independent story because Ed and Lorraine's evidence never covers Annabelle's origins before the nurse owned her. Now, in the opening scene of the first Conjuring movie, it shows the same scene but a longer cut of it. It shows the nurses, Debbie and Camilla, sitting on their couch having a conversation with Ed and Lorraine. However, in this opening scene, there's a little more explanation from Ed and Lorraine about what is actually possessing the doll, that it is a demonic being, an inhuman spirit. This terrifies the girls, and then the film cuts to one of Ed and Lorraine's lectures wrapping up and them explaining themselves to be ghost hunters. Okay, back to the Annabelle movie. Since it isn't really relevant or based in any actual truth past the point of the opening scene, instead of going into further detail, we'll just skip the rest of the movie and move on to the alleged truth behind it. Let's get to the Annabelle facts, or so-called facts, according to the Warrens. Alright, as far as the first documented account, from what I can tell, the history of Annabelle is as follows. The Warrens remember being contacted by an Episcopal priest named Father Everett in 1970 on behalf of 2 nurses and another Episcopal priest named Father Kevins. They are contacting the Warrens on behalf of Deirdre Bernard and Laura Clifton. Ed and Lorraine agree to visit the women and see if they can help. When they arrive, one of the women begins explaining what had been happening to them all in their apartment. She tells the Warrens it had been going on for a while now. It started innocently enough, but had grown dark and uncomfortable, and now very recently, dangerous. They said they didn't know what else to do. The Warrens encouraged the women to explain what they were referring to. One of them spoke up and said one word, Annabelle. Who's Annabelle? Asked Lorraine. She's a Raggedy Ann doll my mother gifted to me on my birthday, explains Deirdre. The Warrens then ask why they believe the doll is a cause for concern. Deirdre tells the Warrens of the mysterious activity seemingly surrounding the doll. It started with the doll moving a little every day. She would leave the doll seated on her bed with his arms and legs stretched out. It was a soft rag doll. It didn't have joints or rigidity in its limbs at all. But somehow, when Deirdre and Laura would return from work in the evening, they would find the doll sitting in different, impossible positions. Arms and or legs folded. Then one evening, instead of just being in a different position, the doll had completely moved from its original location. Upon opening their front door one night, they see Annabelle kneeling in front of the door in a chair. When they moved the doll and tried to replace it in the same position, they were unable to recreate it due to the doll's pillow-like limbs. They then began to believe some unnatural force was responsible for the doll's behavior. Shortly after the doll began moving around the apartment, Deirdre and Laura began to find pieces of paper that was not paper any of them owned or could be found in the house. The pieces of paper would have notes written on them. The women began finding them more and more in random places all over the apartment. The notes said things like, "Help us. Help Cal." Cal, or Cal Randell, was Laura's fiancé. The women then decided to contact a local medium and have the medium help them figure out what was causing the strange activity that seemed to be connected to the doll. The medium instantly had an answer for the uneasy nurses. She explained the spirit of a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins used to play in the fields located where the apartment building now stood. She wanted to stay with Deirdre and Laura and asked for permission to inhabit and reside in the doll. Deirdre and Laura were so touched by the story the psychic relayed about Annabelle that they agreed to let her reside in the doll. They soon regretted this decision. Activity got worse and more frightening. At one point, Cal, alone in the apartment with Laura, was physically attacked by an unseen force. They heard a noise come from the back of the apartment where Annabelle was. He went to investigate. Suddenly, Cal gripped his chest in pain and blood began to seep through the front of his shirt. He quickly lifted up the shirt to reveal 7 slashes across his chest. This was the final straw, and the women decided to contact a local priest, and the local priest, not feeling knowledgeable enough to help, contacted the Warrens. When the Warrens were caught up on all the happenings, Ed informs them the entity inhabiting their doll was not a friendly spirit of a little girl. Instead, a demonic, inhuman spirit. He explains how this evil spirit tricked them both by playing on their sympathies and pretending to be the spirit of an innocent little girl. They fell for it and invited the inhuman spirit to terrorize them freely. Ed tells them he fully believes if they hadn't called for help and let it go on, someone would have been killed within the next couple weeks. Little dramatic, Ed. The Warrens then tell Deirdre and Laura that they need to have the apartment and Annabelle exorcised. A priest comes to exorcise the home and attempts to exorcise the doll. When he completes his ritual, the apartment feels lighter and freer than it had in ages. The Warrens quickly tell them, even though they were able to cleanse the home of the demonic presence, it still resides in the doll. Lorraine remembers the nurse asking her to take the doll because she wanted nothing more to do with it. So the Warrens took the doll home for safekeeping. Ed and Lorraine removed the doll from the apartment and returned to their home to store it in a safe place. This wasn't the end of the story, though. Apparently, on the way home, the brake system on the Warrens' car malfunctioned several times, to the point where Ed reached for some holy water, splashed it over Annabelle in the shape of a cross, and said a blessing over the doll. After this, they were able to continue their journey home safely. The film Annabelle Comes Home opens with this scene of the Warrens returning home with the Annabelle doll. Later, after all is said and done, and the Warrens have Annabelle, Father Daniel Mills, who had been working with the Warrens, comes to visit Ed. And Annabelle. Ed was still keeping Annabelle in the chair next to his desk at this point. After Ed recounted the events that took place with the doll, the priest picked up Annabelle and said, quote, "You're just a rag doll, Annabelle. You can't hurt anything," then carelessly tossed the doll back onto the chair. Ed warned him he probably shouldn't say things like that to the doll, with a laugh. The priest then ended his visit about an hour later and said his goodbyes. He was then warned by Lorraine as he leaves to be very careful on his way home and to please phone her and let her know he's made it safely. He later calls Lorraine and asks her why she would say such a thing, and she said she knew he would have an accident. He confirmed that he did. Today, the Raggedy Ann doll, now named Annabelle, is enclosed in a special glass box that is regularly blessed by a priest with a prayer to contain the evil within. Allegedly. According to the Warrens' book, The Demonologist, Annabelle didn't go directly into her infamous case when the Warrens brought her home. The 1980 book, which is where I found the first telling of the Annabelle story, states Ed put her in a chair in his office next to his desk. It said over the coming weeks, she levitated many times in the chair and then began showing up in random places in the house. When the Warrens were traveling, they would lock her in a building not attached to their home, and then they would come home and find her sitting in Ed's easy chair. They also say Annabelle didn't come to their home alone. Supposedly, a black cat sometimes would appear next to the doll. It would then seem to inspect the things throughout Ed's office, the artifacts they had collected and such. Then it would return to the doll's side and dissipate into thin air. Eventually, the Warrens decided Annabelle would be safer locked away. You can now see Annabelle in her case in several YouTube videos and with a simple image search on Google. She's kept in the Warrens Occult Museum. She still resides there to this day, even after their passing. I have also shared some of these photos on the Instagram. This story is pretty much all the information we have about Annabelle. I believe its first mention ever is in the book The Demonologist by Gerald Brittle. In Chapter 3, Ed and Lorraine tell the version of the story I just covered. In the book, the people who owned the doll are named Deirdre Bernard and Laura Clifton, and then their friend Cal Randell. You can look up the names given and find more variations of the story and name changes of the characters over time. There's even a YouTube video of the relocating of the Annabelle doll in February of 2017, and Tony Spera, the Warren's son-in-law, refers to Deirdre as Donna and Cal as Lou. In other YouTube videos covering the story of Annabelle, the characters are referred to as Donna, Angie, and Lou. I'm assuming those YouTube videos got their information directly from Tony Spera and not the Warrens' book. Furthermore, Ed tells the story of Annabelle again in an interview with his son-in-law Tony Spera in the year 2000. This can be seen on YouTube on Tony's channel called The Official Ed and Lorraine Warren Channel. In this telling, things start to feel off. If you've already read the book or heard the account of the book, this interview might seem a little different. First, Ed says it was 1971 when the nurse who owned Annabelle received it as a birthday gift. Originally, the Warrens' involvement happened in 1970. It has been 30 years, so what's being off a year or two matter at this point? So Ed continues to tell the story as he remembers it, but he's leaving out the names of the people involved. Remember, there's been many names used since the story was first told in the book The Demonologist, so who's to say what their real names are or were? Then Ed goes on to name the location of the hospital the girls worked in, Hartford Hospital in Connecticut. This location is not mentioned in the original telling in the book. A location was not mentioned at all, just the location of one of the priests they spoke with. Ed starts to get more into the story he's telling Tony in the interview, with Lorraine by his side, occasionally chiming in. He begins to embellish the story more and more. In the book, Ed says the nurses told him they saw Annabelle kneeling in the chair. In this interview, Ed is very adamant that he saw it himself. He also says the girls witnessed the doll move right in front of their eyes, raising its arms at the table, and that's what led them to contact a psychic. The two women didn't have this recount in the story Ed tells in The Demonologist in 1980. As Ed retells stories over time, the embellishments grow grander. Then Tony comes in and he just changes the details altogether. Are they both victims of senility? Ed then goes on to say how the two women eventually got a hold of him and Lorraine. In the book, the two Episcopal priests mentioned are Father Everett and Father Kevins. In the interview with Tony 30 years later, Ed says the High Episcopal Canon in Hartford, Connecticut was contacted. Then he contacted Father Richard Nolan, who comes up in other Warren cases. Then Father Nolan called the Warrens. Another thing that stood out to me in this interview is Ed claims he had film and recordings of the Annabelle case. He's adamant he has proof when telling Tony about it. Alright then, Ed, where is it? Ed then goes on to tell an entirely different story with the priest who was in a car accident that was supposedly caused by his disrespecting the Annabelle doll. Originally, Ed says the priest only mocked the doll by saying, "You're just a rag doll, you can't hurt anything." Now, in this 2000 interview, Ed says the priest picked up and threw the doll. He just casually tossed it back in the chair originally. There was no aggression in the first story. just shrug disbelief. But that's Ed for you. The older he got, the more embellished the stories got. The priest then experiences the insane accident that totals his car on the way home and calls to tell the Warrens what happened. So Ed says he knows this is true because he and Lorraine both experienced car trouble once, involving the transportation of the Annabelle doll to their home, right? No. This time, Ed says it was after they discussed the Amityville case while driving on the same highway the priest wrecked on, Highway 84. What about the brake malfunctions transporting Annabelle back to your home, Mr. Warren? Why can't you keep up with your facts, sir? Then he goes on to embellish a little more and says the priest told him the last thing he remembered seeing before the accident was the Annabelle doll. And then there's Tony Spera's retellings. I don't understand why Tony would use different names when the Warrens clearly named the people who experienced Annabelle in the book, a book that is supposed to be based in fact. The Warrens do state in their books and public recounts that names are sometimes changed for the protection of the person or persons involved. Does that mean Tony messed up and gave Deirdre's real name when he refers to her as Donna? Maybe in private conversations, Ed and Lorraine spoke more candidly about cases and used real names when passing along the stories to their son-in-law, who would eventually take over the Warrens' estate when they passed. There's one more thing Ed had to say in his 2000 interview with his son-in-law, Tony Spera. So, originally, in his book, Ed says the two nurses called a medium, and the medium said the entity inhabiting Annabelle was a 7-year-old girl who lived and died there before the apartment building existed. Then Ed and Lorraine explained to the nurses that it wasn't actually true. Annabelle was an inhuman spirit and not the spirit of a real little girl. Jump forward to the 2000 interview, and Ed explains to Tony that there was a little girl who died in a car accident in front of the apartment building where the nurses lived. Okay, Ed, how can there be a little girl spirit who lived way back when, who wasn't really a little girl spirit, but an inhuman spirit, but also the spirit of a 6-year-old girl who died in a car accident? This is really hard to keep up with sometimes, guys. There's really no concrete evidence or record to back up any part of the story. The Warrens supposedly just took the word of Deirdre, Laura, and Cal, or maybe Donna, Maggie, and Lou, at face value and didn't investigate further. Some say they didn't need to because Lorraine was clairvoyant and she just knew. That seemed to be enough for everyone involved. But with variations in details over time, you just can't be sure what's true. It's also probably pretty difficult to keep up with the lies as you age. The popularity of this story gained serious momentum as it became a spin-off film of the Conjuring franchise nearly 50 years later. Thanks to director and writer James Wan's interpretations of the stories, a new horror film franchise is taking people by storm. The fact that the case took place in 1970, and it was the first time, according to the Warrens, that they took on a case, could be the reason it's hard to track down concrete evidence supporting the story. But maybe the story is just that, a story. I mean, look at how much money the Annabelle trilogy brought in. Each movie brought in around $300 million. Who wouldn't say a story was true, or at least partially true, for that kind of profit? And I believe the Warrens knew early on that they wanted to make money in film. Also, this might be a good time to share a quote from Lorraine herself. In an interview about their work, shortly after the release of the second Conjuring film, Lorraine is discussing what she and Ed did as paranormal investigators, and at the end of the sentence, she randomly states the Warner brothers now own their lives. The full quote goes, "The type of work that we do is investigation into the paranormal, the supernatural, the preternatural, from haunting phenomena caused by human spirits or the poltergeist activity or the demonic inhuman hauntings. We worked on numerous possession cases and exorcisms, and Warner Brothers has the rights to our life." Just an interesting piece of information to chew on. There's something else I discovered very recently about the story of Annabelle as the Warrens have told it. I've been scouring the interwebs looking for any evidence I could possibly find that would make me a believer of this story. Instead, I found one more version of the story as told by the Warrens from a college lecture in the early 90s. A Reddit user who would like to remain anonymous gave me permission to share a little bit about their experience at a Warrens lecture, best they can remember. Here's what they had to say. They start out making a joke that I found rather funny. They mention they attend one of the Warrens' quote, demonstrations, and then laughs and says, they just realized the word demon is in the word demonstration, and how that's only relevant here. I thought it was funny. So they go on to say the Warrens talked about a few things such as Amityville, a family who lived above a mortician. I'm assuming this was probably the Henniker family haunting. And the main topics being Annabelle and the haunting of Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut, and a haunting specific to the college they were attending at the time. The Reddit user goes on to say the Warrens said Annabelle was a demonically possessed Raggedy Ann doll that likes to hurt people. So here's the kicker. Ed says, it possessed the doll after the owner and her roommate played with the Ouija board. Wait, what? Okay, let's stop there for a moment. When I spoke with this user, I confirmed with them that they remembered it this way, that there was a Ouija board involved. They admitted it had been 30 plus years and their memory was foggy, but when I told them the other two versions of the story, they said, if it helps, neither of those versions ring a bell for me. None of the other stories are known to have a Ouija board involved, so if this person who attended the lecture remembers the nurses playing with it to conjure Annabelle, then there we have it, a third version told by Ed and Lorraine Warren themselves. Now I know this is a second-hand foggy memory account, but still, from what we know of the Warrens thus far, this is a very plausible situation. Thank you, kind Reddit user, for allowing me to use your story and pick your brain for 30-year-old memories. Feel free to hit me up if you ever remember anything else and you'd like to share. Anyways, no matter what you believe, haunted dolls are, well, creepy. Annabelle today has quite the reputation. She still resides in that special protected glass case. The Warrens both very adamantly stated that Annabelle was very dangerous and still inhabited by the evil inhuman spirit, which is why she's contained the way she is. Alright, let's take a short break to hear from our sponsor.
Hello everyone! Are you ready to embark on a magical journey into the world of nature's treasures? Look no further than Into the Woods Stones and Crystals. Discover the enchanting collection of stones and crystals that will ignite your spirit and elevate your well-being. At Into the Woods Stones and Crystals, they offer a treasure trove of Mother Earth's finest gems, all carefully handpicked to bring you positive energy and healing vibrations. Whether you're a seasoned crystal enthusiast or just beginning your crystal journey, they've got something for everyone. From amethyst to quartz, citrine to obsidian, each crystal is a unique masterpiece waiting to enhance your life. And if you listened to my interview on Creepy Chisma, you know how much I love obsidian. But that's not all. When you shop with them, you're not just buying crystals, you're investing in a deeper connection with nature. Their crystals are ethically sourced and sustainably harvested, ensuring they protect the earth as they share its precious gifts. And here's a special treat for you listeners. Use code TRUTHORDEMONS, all one word, at checkout to enjoy an exclusive discount on your purchase. Ready to bring a touch of magic into your life? Visit their website, into-the-woods-stones.myshopify.com. I'll put the link in the show notes. Explore their exquisite collection and don't forget to follow them on social media for updates, special offers, and crystal wisdom. I will put all links in the show notes. Into the Woods Stones and Crystals, where the magic of nature meets the power of your spirit. Shop now, enter Truth or Demons at checkout, and let the journey begin.
And we're back. According to the Warrens, many people who visited their occult museum when it was still open have stories of bad things happening to them after mocking or disrespecting Annabelle upon meeting her. There's even a story of a boy dying on his motorcycle directly after mocking Annabelle. The Annabelle believers hold this to be a true account. People who believe in the power of Annabelle will advise against ever disrespecting her. Unfortunately, you can no longer visit the museum. Something about zoning issues, according to Tony. It's currently owned by Tony Spera, the Warren son-in-law, and their daughter, his wife, Judy, who they left it to. I also heard a rumor the museum was actually damaged by a flood and will not be reopening. I hope that's not the case. I would really love to visit. Let's talk about Judy a little bit, the Warrens' daughter. Judy has been interviewed a handful of times, but mostly states she doesn't really want to be a part of anything and that it all scares her very much. She repeatedly says how afraid she is of Annabelle in particular. In the third movie of the Annabelle trilogy, the focus is on Judy as a child and what it was like for her living in the home with an occult museum in the basement. The movie highlights some of the cases the Warrens investigated while telling a horror story of Annabelle being unleashed upon Judy and her babysitters. This part of the movie is 100% fiction. Judy never had any experiences in the Warren home that she talks about. She just says she was very scared of the house and her room, and of that doll. Someone who was once close to the Warrens stated Judy never lived at the home. She was always staying with her grandparents. Judy herself later confirms this. In an interview, Judy Warren, now Judy Spera, is asked what it was like at the dinner table in her house. She responds, "Well, first of all, I lived with my grandparents." She says this was mostly because she was in school and her parents traveled a lot. In the same interview, Judy's asked what she thinks her late father would think of the films. Her reply was, he would have been thrilled about the movies. Probably because how much money they made. You can find this full interview with Judy Spera through the link in the episode notes. Now that we've covered the Warrens' first officially documented case, I wanted to take a moment to talk about Ed and Lorraine Warren's actual first case, as they tell it. in yet another interview with Tony Spera. It happened right before Ed started creating paintings of haunted houses and making Lorraine knock on doors to convince the homeowners to let them in to talk about their ghosts. Ed himself says their first case was at the Ocean-born Mary house in Henniker, New Hampshire. This was shortly after he began expressing to Lorraine he wanted to look more into the mystery of haunted houses, especially after growing up in one. Ed was painting landscapes and seascapes, and he and Lorraine would drive up to popular tourist destinations and sell them for $3 to $4 a piece. At the time, this was really good money. For reference, gas was only 18 cents a gallon then. So they take a trip up to Vermont to drop off some paintings for a customer. On their way back, they noticed a sign for Henniker, New Hampshire, and Ed remembers reading about a haunted house there called the Ocean-born Mary house in a town called Henniker. A kid riding along assisting Ed said to Ed, there must be a million Hennikers, trying to say this couldn't possibly be the Henniker Ed read about. Then apparently right after he said this, they see a sign that says, the only Henniker on Earth. Of course I had to see if this sign was real, so I did a little internet search, and I found the sign. It says, Welcome to Henniker, Incorporated, 1768, the only one on Earth. It's posted on the Instagram now if you'd like to see. Ed then explains what a fascinating case this was. I did some more research, and I found the information on Ocean-born Mary and her haunting. The story of Ocean-born Mary's entrance into the world is most likely true according to most historians. It's said her mother went into premature labor when pirates invaded the vessel she was leaving Northern Ireland on to live in America and escape the violence of 1720 Scotland. History states when the pirate captain, Don Pedro, heard the cries of the newborn baby, he told the mother if she named the baby after his mother, he would spare everyone on the ship and let them be on their way. After she agreed, the pirate captain then gifted little Mary with several gifts, including a bolt of green silk he instructed she wear as her wedding dress. This is said to be true, because pieces of that green wedding dress are in museums in 3 different locations, Londonderry, New Hampshire being one. I added photos of the pieces of the dress on the Instagram as well. According to the local legend, the haunting that occurs at this location is as follows. It said you can hear and see Mary in the home, as well as at the same time on Halloween night every year you can see a ghostly horse-drawn carriage approach the house. Her apparition is said to get out of the carriage and go to the well and drop a package in and then go back to the carriage and ride off. Ed said in an interview, quote, Now, many people have experienced this haunting. Ed also gives a little history of Ocean-born Mary's life in the same interview, explaining that she, Mary Walsh as he calls her, moved in with the owner of this manor in Henniker with her 7 sons to be a housekeeper. According to Ed, the pirate captain, the one who demanded Mary's mother name her after his mother to spare their lives, was the owner. He calls him Captain Perry in the interview. But yeah, he apparently built this house and kept in touch with Mary, and when her husband died, while she was in her late 40s, he asked her to move in. Some say they had a wild love affair. Either way, she agreed and moved in with her sons. This is according to Ed's story in the interview with his son-in-law Tony Spera on the YouTube channel. He says that later, the pirate captain was murdered in the orchard, probably for his treasure buried in the backyard. He continues with his rendition of the story and tells how Mary lived in this home with her sons until she died when she was 98. So after seeing the sign for Henniker, Ed instantly wants to find the house and investigate. He said on their way up they heard a strange, eerie whistling sound. He doesn't really say much else about the sound except that it was strange. He continues on to say as they approached the dark, creepy house, no one wanted to get out of the car. So this is when he threw Lorraine out and made her go up and knock on the door. A man named Mr. Roy invited them up and told Ed and Lorraine about the house and what he and his mother had experienced there. Lorraine says she was listening to his voice and the sincerity in it, and then claims in this moment she had her first out-of-body experience. Another interview I saw with Lorraine in 2017, she said her first out-of-body experience was at age 17 while she was in the hospital after her appendix had ruptured and they weren't sure she'd make it. But anyway, they don't really elaborate further on this visit to the Henniker home or Lorraine's experience, but they say it was their very first haunting investigation. Okay, now that I've told you about the Warrens' account and experience in this so-called haunted home, let me tell you the facts about Ocean-born Mary. According to Martha Taylor, the official Henniker town historian in New Hampshire, Ocean-born Mary, born Mary Wilson Wallace, not Walsh Ed, never lived in the house in Henniker. It was her son Robert's home, but she herself never lived there. She did move in with her son William when her husband passed on the same street as the Henniker house on Bear Hill Road. Also, the infamous pirate that spared hers and all her shipmates' lives never built the home. It is associated with Mary only in that her son had owned it. Mary lived in a home in Londonderry, New Hampshire. It was later dismantled and moved to Rhode Island. This happened after Mary's death. Some believe if Mary haunts anywhere, it's there. The house she lived in with her son William burned down in 1920 and was never rebuilt, so there's no haunting to be found there either. In 1917, a photographer named Louis Roy, or Gus, or Gussie, or Mr. Roy, as the Warrens referred to him, bought the ocean-born Mary house from Robert, Mary's son. He proceeded to fabricate tales of a ghostly apparition of a woman with red hair and rumors of gold buried on the grounds. He began running a scam and charging people to dig for that gold and promoting the sightings of ocean-born Mary. Local historians 100% believe any and all stories of ghostly sightings of ocean-born Mary in the house are complete works of fiction stemming from Mr. Roy's tall tales created to make a quick buck. It's even said Mr. Roy confessed on his deathbed in 1960 that the whole thing was a hoax. It's not clear when the horse-drawn carriage sightings started, but there is no record of anyone actually seeing it. So how's that make you feel? Knowing the Warrens' very first case they mentioned ever going on was based around pure fiction? Sure makes you think, doesn't it? Just like Ocean-born Mary's story, there's so many retellings of the Annabelle story. It's hard to know or even prove its accuracy and level of truth. Do you think the Annabelle doll is really haunted or inhabited by an evil, inhuman spirit? Or do you maybe think this could be pure fiction? It's hard without anyone backing the account. What happened to Deirdre and Laura? And Cal? Are they still around? Are they getting a cut of this money their story is bringing in? Or perhaps they've all passed, thus making it easier to exploit the story. And where's the evidence? I understand not everyone had a camera in 1970, so the scratches that Cal supposedly suffered wouldn't have been photographed. But what about the notes that Annabelle was allegedly writing and leaving in the apartment? I definitely would have saved those if it were happening to me. I'd be showing everyone. And what about all the so-called film and recording evidence Ed has? There's so many questions and so much uncertainty. And with both Ed and Lorraine no longer with us, there's no way we'll ever know for sure. Unless Judy and her husband Tony were to come forward and admit a few things. But we know that'll never happen. So many people support and believe wholeheartedly that the Warrens' cases are undeniably true. I just can't bring myself to have that blind faith. There's too many things making me question everything. And apparently I'm not the only one who has questions about the legitimacy of Annabelle. Some have said the Warrens were big fans of the Twilight Zone TV series in the 60s. In Season 5, Episode 6, the episode Living Doll, the story of a murderous possessed doll is told. The little girl is gifted a doll on her birthday, and the doll proceeds to terrorize her stepfather, and no one else witnesses it. The stories aren't similar in any sense other than a possessed doll gifted to a little girl on her birthday. But here's an interesting note. The mom's name in the episode is Annabelle. Yep, how's that for a coincidence? So I actually haven't yet stated my stance on the paranormal and all it entails. I'm sure at this point you've all determined I'm a pure skeptic. But actually, I'm a believer. I've had my own experiences in this crazy, unpredictable world, and I have several trustworthy family and friends that have all experiences I believe really happened to them. But there's a very fine line for me when it comes to who and what I believe. If your story doesn't quite match other stories from more reliable sources, I'm less inclined to believe you. If you have other professionals in your field repeatedly calling you out as a scam and con artist, I will be less inclined to believe you. And finally, if you go on shows like Sally Jessy Raphael and have childish arguments instead of calm, rational discussions, I'm definitely less inclined to believe you. I've also noticed Ed has a really bad habit of being a pseudo-intellectualist. He talks a big game and sounds like he knows what he's talking about because of his confident, authoritative tone in speech, but Ed literally makes things up sometimes. As I explore more cases, I will have more examples of this to share with you all. Ed never had to worry about anyone being able to instantly fact-check him with Google. He knew he was running the show, and who was really going to challenge him? Since so many people have claimed to have had experiences caused or influenced by Annabelle herself after meeting her in the Warrens Museum, I thought I'd read a few for you guys. Then leave it up to you to decide if you think these people's accounts are legitimate or purely fiction. It's funny how so many experiences can stem from a complete fallacy. Or is it possible Annabelle really is a haunted doll? Experience number 1. Actually, it turns out there is only one. In all my research, I can't find but one single experience outside the experiences the doll's original owners claim to have had and the car accident the priest endured. The one and only account is of this man and his girlfriend who wrecked on a motorcycle after visiting the Annabelle doll in the Warrens Museum. We don't have the name of this man and his girlfriend, or a news report, or anything for evidence or proof this incident even occurred. Lorraine said the man and woman were looking at the Annabelle doll when he started mocking it and banging on the glass. The couple was asked to leave after this disrespectful behavior. Later, according to Lorraine, the woman told her on their way home they were laughing and making fun of Annabelle, and the man lost control of the bike and hit a tree head-on. The man died in the accident. The woman spent a year in the hospital. I cannot find any concrete confirmations of this story, and it's the only one. I scoured Reddit hoping to find at least one other account gone wrong, but nothing. The more I read, the less I'm inclined to believe. Reddit is surprisingly full of people who do not believe a single thing the Warrens or the Conjuring franchise produce. I think most people that have had the opportunity to visit Annabelle were too scared to test her paranormal abilities, and then those that weren't afraid did, and nothing of consequence happened to them. There is one other story of a detective that supposedly touched the Annabelle doll when he was alone with her and was scared so bad he refused to tell anyone but Lorraine what happened, and she had to swear never to tell anyone either. Convenient. Ed says Lorraine never told him what the man said, but she didn't have to. He said he knew the detective touched the doll, and then the room violently reacted with everything moving around and falling to the floor. Apparently you can't even touch Annabelle, for when your aura touches hers, it acts like a beacon, calling all spirits. That's what the Warrens say anyway. Makes you question the original image of Lorraine carrying the Annabelle doll just a little bit harder, doesn't it? So I guess that's about it for the case of the haunted doll. What do you think? How does this case make you feel about the Warrens? What do you believe when it comes to haunted dolls? Feel free to comment or reach out on Instagram and let me know your thoughts. Next time on Truth or Demons, we'll take a trip out into the country to a quaint little farmhouse in a small town in Rhode Island. We'll meet a family of 7 and learn about the 10 years they lived with unexplainable happenings and how one of the daughters still deals with the paranormal to this day. Come back next time for the story of the Perrin family haunting in episode 3, The Farm. Research for this episode was done by me. Editing and sounds by Brandon Little, aka Metal and More Soundscapes on Instagram. Also, check out the new logo, designed by Skip Pollock. You can find him on Instagram at skip_Pollock. Thank you so much, Skip. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to give the Instagram and now the TikTok a follow. Just search Truth or Demons Podcast. Also, if you had fun, please rate and review. I hope you remember to stick around until the end. I've got a tad bit of fun for you involving the Annabelle movie and the doll herself. Buckle up and let's have a giggle or two. So for those of you that have seen the movies, did you know they give the actual Raggedy Ann doll a cameo? Did you see her? Very clever, Mr. Wan. This proves there weren't any licensing issues to use the Raggedy Ann doll in the films. Another bit of fun to go with the movie. The 3 female leads in the Annabelle Comes Home film said in an interview the set was, quote, a bit haunted. Every time they ran past the set for the Warrens' room for a certain scene, the Annabelle doll inside the room would be in a different position every time. It'd be really funny if someone posted up in that room all day for the filming of this scene just to mess with the girls. But who knows? Maybe the doll really was moving. Maybe it was even Ed on set having a little fun from the other side. Next, I have a really funny piece of info I stumbled on while watching the YouTube videos of people touring the Warrens Occult Museum. The wooden glass case that contains the Annabelle doll had something pinned to it that caught my eye. There's a tarot card pinned to the Annabelle case, the Devil card. Ironic, as the Devil card, when drawn in a reading, is interpreted to mean the following. The Devil card represents being seduced by the material world and physical pleasures, also living in fear, domination, and bondage, being caged by an overabundance of luxury. Discretion should be used in personal and business matters. I wonder if this irony was on purpose or completely lost on the Warrens and Tony Spera. Maybe they're all pseudo-intellectualists and thought that this specific tarot card meant something else. Who knows? I have one more tidbit to hopefully make you giggle. On August 14th of 2020, Annabelle the doll escaped the Warrens Occult Museum. Just kidding. This was a real rumor though. Someone decided to start the rumor that at 3 a.m., Annabelle had escaped her case and was running loose somewhere in Connecticut. This was quickly debunked, and everyone began to breathe sighs of relief that this thing nightmares are made of was not really on the loose. The rumor's origins were traced and believed to have started due to the mistranslation in interviews with an actor that participated in the film speaking on scenes from another film. It was all cleared up, and even Tony Spera made a YouTube video addressing the incident and confirming Annabelle did not escape her case and was still safely locked up in the Warrens Museum. Thanks for coming back to join me for episode 2. I hope you enjoyed yourself and come back for episode 3. Until next time.